Greetings, everyone. This is I, Archbishop Belmont, from the Noble House of Belmont. And I'm coming to you tonight, or this evening, which is January 9th, 2971 Berber calendar, which is your 2022 Gregorian calendar. We'll be experiencing or having our Berber New Year on the King's birthday, which is January 14th. So once again, happy Gregorian New Year to those who celebrate the Gregorian New Year. And for us Berbers, ours is going to be January 14th, so get ready for that. This short is coming to speak to you regarding who we are here in this time and day. Once again, it's Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Yeah, that's right, Anglo-Saxon Berbers. And we keep reiterating that on every last one of these videos we keep making. But we know we're going to have new viewers who's going to start viewing later as they start to catch up into speed or consciousness regarding this information. So it's going to be periodically where we're going to have to come out and do another one of these refreshers. So that way that you, the audience who's now viewing this for the first time, can now start getting themselves up to speed regarding who you are, if you're someone who look like me or someone who's claiming to be so-called, Negro, Black, African-American, colored, etc. Our disclaimer, once again, especially coming from the Third Temple English Church and as the Archbishop, this information is not meant to hurt anyone. It's meant to bring clarity to a world who has been pretty much in confusion. This confusion, we don't need to go and try to get in all of that about in this video, how it started. The point that this video is going to be talking about is a book that's written by an author who passed away named Thomas William Shores, called The Origins of the Anglo-Saxon. Sorry about that. I like to have a little music playing. Turn it down. The Origin of the Anglo-Saxon. And book right here. So this, Origin of the Anglo-Saxon race. A study of the settlement of England. England. And the tribal origin of the Old English people. So get this book, because this is what's going to be one of the key treasures for those who are going to pretty much be being exposed to this information regarding who the true Anglo-Saxons are today, or who they always actually were, but they forgot who they are. But we'll talk about it in another story, why they forgot. But let's get to it. Okay, so the cool thing about this is we're living in a time and day and age when you can get practically most of these books online. You can be able to view for yourself. This website is called archive.org. I really appreciate the creators of these, I really appreciate these creators who are doing this work to be able to put this information, or giving us the ability to look at these doctrines. It's easy and availably ready during this day and time. So I'm going to go straight to the meat of this video, or this book, I'm kind of nervous because, we're doing it on myself, but gotta get it done. All right, so this is chapter 7. Chapter 7 is called Our Darker Forefathers. And I'm going to, I'm going to be jumping a lot in this when I'm reading, because I'm just trying to get to certain pieces that you need to see, because I don't want, like I said, I don't want the video to be long. I tried to do it earlier and it went over an hour. Don't want to have an hour-long video, but if it does get to an hour, then you're going to be learning a lot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right, so chapter 7, Our Darker Forefathers. One of the facts concerning the color of the hair and eyes of the people in different counties, zoom in, concerning the color of the hair and eyes of the people in the different counties of England at the present time, brought to light by scientific observation, is that there's a higher percentage of people of a mixed brown type living in Herefordshire, Buckinghamshire, Wiltshire, and Dorset than in most other counties, except those in Cornwall and on the old Celtic borders. The inhabitants of these counties are the darkest. This is usually explained on the supposition that in the process of the Saxon settlement, a British population was allowed to remain in these parts of England, which in all course of the centuries became mixed with the inhabitants of Anglo-Saxon descent. And consequently, the present population is more marked than those of pure descent by brown, hazel, or black eyes, when brown chestnut, dark brown, or black hair. All right, so first they're explaining the eye color as well as the hair. Now we're going to start getting into complexion. The counties of Hertford and Buckingham have people as dark as Wales, and all investigation goes to show that this brunette outcrop is a reality. So they're telling you that brunette, which is brown, is a reality there. You know, you're seeing, you know, that's what it is. In dealing with the circumstances, Bedell found that an area in which there's a larger percentage of brown people in England extends from the River Leah to the Warwickshire Avon. In dealing with the circumstances of the settlement, these ethnological facts must receive consideration. All right, so he's saying brown people, a large percentage of brown people in England, all right, a large. So this is something that, you know, many of us never knew, or, you know, never had the opportunity to really dive into, like we're going to right now. Okay, page 104. Of a British population is a possible explanation, and one which appears to be the most natural. As there are some difficulties in this conclusion, the question arises, is there any other way in which the origin of these mixed brown people, surrounded by others of a somewhat fair complexion, can be explained? An alternative explanation is that the people of a darker race may have come with the Angles, Saxons, or Danes, and have settled largely in these parts of the country. So they're letting you know that the Anglo-Saxon Danes, there were brown people. There's a circumstantial evidence that people of a brown or dark complexion did come into England during the time of both the Saxon and Danish settlements. And this may now be summarized. All right, so even before the so-called Saxons and Danish settlements coming in, the original people, Albions, there were dark people, or dark Aboriginal people, which you will call Aboriginal today. All right. First, we have the evidence that Wends were among settlers either during the early period or later in alliance with the Danes. The Wends, specifically so-called by the Germans, included some tribes much darker than the Saxons and Angles, as a remnant of the race still called Wends living on the border of Saxony and Prussia at the present time shows. They are the darkest people in northern Germany, according to the official census. From 26 to 29% of the children of the Wendish district of Lusatia, south of the Dresden, were shown by the census to the brunettes. Notwithstanding the admixture of race with the much fairer people of Teutonic descent, which have been going on along this borderland since the dawn of history. All the Slav nations are not dark. All right, so pay attention to this, because many of our brothers and sisters are going to say, well, don't Slav or slave come from Slav? The term, in a way, yeah. But you want to know who you are, because, see, even though I'm speaking of us as English people as being the descendants of prisoners of war and indentured servitude, but we're also, too, going to show you that how a lot of these people from different backgrounds who were brown just like us, they're still Berbers, how they came in. And so it's a mixture. Now, I don't want to get all into that. That's something that we will have for another discussion. But the point is that the term Slav, where we get so-called slave from, by the now I'm starting to see how these people, according to Thomas William Shore, is describing them. Some are as fair as the Scandinavians, while others, such as the Wends and the Czechs of Bohemia, are dark. See, the Wendish place names in the Buckinghamshire and on its borders help to show that some people of this race probably settled in that county. Huntington Don tells us that during the later Saxon period, they formed part of the Scandian hosts. They were in alliance with the Norwegians, Danes, Swedes, Goths, and Frisians, or in any case, people of these races were acting together in the Danish expeditions against England. It is likely, therefore, that when permanent settlements were formed, adjoining townships will be occupied by people of this alliance. This consideration helps us to identify Windlesbury in Herefordshire, Wendover and its neighborhood in Buckinghamshire, the Anglo-Saxon Wendofra and Windsor, anciently Windsor, close to the southern border of this county, were probably named after settlers who were Winds. And now they already told you that the Winds were dark people. Okay, if British people were left as suggested like an eddy between the main lines of the Anglo-Saxon advance east and west of the counties, would it not be very surprising that the advancing Saxons should make no use of the existing Roman roads? All right, now let's go ahead and jump past this because that's not important. Let me see to the next page because for the sake of time. All right, so let's get over here. Page 106. It says there's an additional evidence supports the Norwegians of a brunette appearance as another source whence brown complexion people may have come into England. On the southeast coast of Norway and here, they're on the coast farther north, a population is met which differs from the usual Norwegian type. And this has been referred by anthropologists to a very ancient settlement there of the prehistoric brown race that survives in the highlands of Central Europe and is known as the brown Alpine race. Now, if you've been paying attention to any of our other videos, we already explained that Alpine, or where you get the Alp variation, is another way to say Alp, which is ALB, or Elf, which is ELF. So the Alpine race or the elf race, these were elves, but elves are also humans. Okay, we'll talk about that in another video. You've been paying attention. This race is believed to have extended before the dawn of history much further northwards in Germany. The brown people of Norway are well seen in Jordan, where Arbo found the blonde and really dark-haired people about equally represented. The Norwegian brunettes differ from the typical blondes of the country in the two other particulars. Now I talk about the hair color. First, they are broad-headed, while the blondes, which comprise the bulk of the nation, are long-headed. And not only are the broad-headed people of these coast district darker as a whole complexion, but in them, the broad-headed individuals tend to be darker than the other type, as Arbo has clearly shown. Okay, so to continue keep getting down, blah, 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 the focus is the Anglo-Saxons. All right. Let's get to it right here. Page 107, second paragraph. This consideration of the probable origin of the great proportion of brunettes in two of the South Midland counties of England leads us to that of color names as surnames and place names. All right, so I'm gonna zoom in on this. Excuse me. So once again, it says this consideration of probable origin of the great proportion of brunettes, I mean brown, people in two of the South Midland counties of England leads us to that of the color names as surnames and place names, which may probably have been derived from their original settlers. So they're telling you the original settlers created these names and there was a representation of colors. Now let's see what colors they're talking about and what colors for what they're describing. For example, there's the common name brown. This has been derived from the Anglo-Saxon brun. So when you see the words B-R-U-N, that means brown. Brun and brown is the same, signifying brown. It is not reasonable to doubt that when our forefathers called a man brun or brown, they gave him this name as a descriptive of his brown complexion. There you go. So as we see these color terms or names, it was actually a description of the complexion. Now we know that we don't supposed to be identifying as our skin complexion. We're supposed to identify as the nation that we derive from or originate from. And in this case, we originate from England or as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. That's where our surnames coming from, as we're going to show. All right. So the probability that the brunettes were common is supported by the frequent references to persons named Brun in Anglo-Saxon literature. Brun was a name not confined to England in the Anglo-Saxon and later periods. On the contrary, we find that it was a common name in ancient Germany. All right. The typical place name Brunninga field occurs in the Charter of Ethelstan. Once again, we already show you King Ethelstan, who's the king of the English, and he looked just like us, you know, a Berber. He was a Berber. Dated AD 938 in local Qui, Brunninga field, Dicitor, Brunsham Hans is mentioned in the chart of Edward the Elder about AD 900. So as you already seen from what they explained, that Brun meant brown. So they're saying that these cities are named after brown people. All right, brown people. Brunsford is another suggestive name. Brunneman is mentioned as a personal name Anglo-Saxon records of the 11th century, and the examples of the name Brunning are somewhat numerous in documents of the same period. At the present time, old place names of which the word Braun forms the chief part, such as Braunschweig or the Brunswick. So like New Brunswick, so Braun, that means brown people, are common in Germany. The custom of calling people by color names from their personal appearance or places after them was clearly not peculiar to our own country. See, so this is something that was actually done back then. It is probable that the name Brunswick was derived from the brown complexion of its original inhabitants. There you go. The map published by Ripley based on an official ethnological survey of Germany shows that parts of the country near Brunswick have a higher percentage of brunettes than the districts further north. Bedell also made observations on the number of Brunswick peasantry and records some remarkable facts relating to the proportion of brunettes among those who came under his observation. In view of this and the evidence relating to the use of the Anglo-Saxon word brun in English place names, we are not, I think, justified in deciding that all English names, which begin with brun or B-R-U-N, modernized into burn. So remember, burn is another way to say brown. In many cases, by the well-known shifting of the R sound, have been derived from brun, a bourne or stream, rather than from brun, brown. Such names as Brunningenfield and Brunnensham point to the opposite conclusion, that brun in such names refers to people, probably so named from their complexions. There you go. If a large proportion of the settlers in the counties of Buckingham and Hertford were of brown complexion, it is clear that they would have been less likely to have been called brun or brown. So once again, like you said, if the people there were in this so-called complexion, they wouldn't have called it that. By their neighbors, then brunettes would in other counties where such a complexion may have been rarer and consequently more likely to have attracted the notice of people around them. It is not probable that people were originally designated by the color names brown, black, gray, or the like, gave themselves these names. They most likely received them from others. So you see outsiders who are also calling us these, or people who came in who was trying to when they renamed and stuff, but they were just naming it based off of the complexion of the people that were there at the time or who used to be there. All right. The evidence concerning brown people in England during the Anglo-Saxon period, which can be derived from the place name Brun, is supplemented by that supplied in at least some of the old place names beginning with Dun and Dunning. Dun is an old English word denoting a color partaking of brown. Getting closer into here, excuse me. Dun is an old English word denoting a color partaking of brown and black, and where it occurs at the beginning of words in such a combination as Dunningland, it is possible that it refers to brown people or their children, rather than to the Anglo-Celtic word dun, a hill or fortified place. So like dun, D-U-N, and we know the vowels are interchangeable, A-E-I-O-U. So like turning that U to an O, you get the don. So like London, it's the same thing. So it's meaning brownish and black people, or excuse me, I don't like to, but it's just complexion of the people, excuse me. So that's the best way to explain it to be politically correct. But these are all Berbers. As regards the ancient brown race or races of North Europe, there can be no doubt of their existence in the southeast of Norway and in the east of Friesland. There can be no doubt about the important influence which the old Wendish race had in the northeastern parts of Germany, transmitting to their descendants a more brunette complexion then prevails among the people of Hanover, Holstein, and Westphalia of more pure Teutonic descent. We cannot reasonably doubt that, in view of such a survival of brown people, as we find in the present time of provinces of North Holland, Drenthe, and Overijssel, which form the hinterland of the ancient Frisian country, numerous brunettes must have come into England among the Frisians. But once again, they were already there too. So they're saying brown people came in with Frisians. So all of these new people who coming into England are all brown people. Different backgrounds. It's like even over here in so-called America, you get many different brown, so-called complexion, dark complexion people who look just like us from different parts of the world who's coming in. This is England. It's the same thing. It's not changed. It would be as unreasonable to doubt this as it would to think that during the Norwegian immigration to England, all the brown people of Norway were precluded from excuse me, leaving their country because they were brunettes, or that the Wends, who undoubtedly settled in England in considerable numbers, were none of them a brunette type. All right, so let me go ahead and get to the meat. The evidence concerning the origin of broad-headed Slavonic nations connects them with the broad-headed and still older Alpine race of Central Europe. So they're telling you the Slavonic nations, the Slavic people, are still connected to the Alpine brown race, which is the Berbers. All right. The most generally accepted theory among anthropologists, so this is anthropologist speaking, as, and this is, they stand as generally accepted theory, as to the physical relationship of the Slavs, is that they were always, as the majority of them are today, of the same stock as the broad-headed Alpine race. This old race has sometimes been called the Celtic. Remember, Celtic race, which would be the Ibernians. Ibernians are what? Berbers. But it's perhaps more accurate to say that it's very ancient stock from which the old Celtic race of the British Bronze Age was an offshoot. This curious circumstance constantly comes before us in considering the Anglo-Saxon settlement of England. If the brunette character of the people of any part of England at the present time is due to a survival of the race characters of the Celts of the British Bronze Age, and if the same character has been caused partly by people of a darkened complexion and broadheads, setting as immigrants among the fair-headed and the long-headed Teutons of other parts of England, this racial character in both cases can be traced along all different lines to the same distant source. So they're saying they all come to the same source, same people. The consideration of the evidence that the people of brunette complexions were among the Anglo-Saxon settlers in England leads on to that the people of a still darker hue, the dark, black, or brown black settlers. There you go. Probably there must have been some of these among the Anglo-Saxons, for we meet with the personal names Blackman, Blakeman, Blackaman, Blackasunu, Blacka, and Blachman in various documents of the period. Blacka was an ealdorman of Lindsey, who was converted by Paulinus. Blakeman was the son of Ilderic or Edric, a descendant of Ida, ancestor of Ilderic, king of Bernicia, and so on. The same kind of evidence is met with among the oldest place names. Blackmenenberg is mentioned in the Blackmenenberg is mentioned in the Anglo-Saxon Charter. Blachmanenstone was the name of a place in Dorset, and Blachmanenstone that of a place in Kent. Blackashiel and Blackenhill are Domesday names of places in Somerset. So what they're saying, based off of the beginning of these names, is the complexion of these people who these cities or towns were named after, and the Anglo-Saxons. So they're telling you this is the Anglo-Saxons look like you and I, or they were the dark complexion, brown, or so-called black people who are here in so-called America today who forgot who they are. And I'm going to show you how is that the case relatively soon. All right. The name black man occurs on the Hertfordshire survey in Blackeen and Lincoln. Among the earliest names of the same kind in the charters were Blackenden in Hants and Blackendon in Dorset. The places called Blackmenestone in Dorset and Blackmenestone in Kent were on or quite close to the coast, a circumstance which points to the settlers having come to these places by water rather than to a survival of black people of the old Celtic race having been left in them. Now, once again, they already told you the so-called Frisian people there in Albion were dark people anyway. And so there's still different types of so-called melanated people who all came in and eventually still occupied the location in which we call England. Now we're going to start speaking about the surnames, how we spoke via here, our representation of the complexion of the people. Now, the main thing we're trying to show is that these are, we are those descendants of these people, and we just forgot. And only way for you to be able to put the pieces together is by utilizing what we have at our disposal. And hopefully from the literature that Thomas William Shore was able to supply to us, this is going to give us or give you will give you enough of the evidence that you need to be able to support your standing to accept who you are going back into time immemorial. Because remember, we don't need to really need to go beyond the year 1189 to verify how long it has been since we have been who we are. We just need to have proof. And this is proof. But once again, you need to be able to come back to the place and to this proper understanding of mind, who it is and where you're coming from, what this authority is actually having its power to be able to be displayed to the world at whole. All right. And I apologize to all those, if I'm speaking a lot that, going over many of you brothers and sisters said. I'm going to try to start, uh, simplifying it, excuse me. All right, so let's get to the last part of this. All right, page 112. Among old place names of the same kind in various counties, some of which are met with in later, but still old records, we find Blackeny in Gloucestershire, Blackenham in Norfolk, Blackenham in Suffolk, Blakemere, an ancient hamlet, and Blakesware near Weir in Herefordshire. This Hereford name is worthy of note in reference to what has been said concerning the brunettes in that county at the present time. Another circumstance connected with these names, which is desirable to remember, is the absence of evidence to show that the Old English ever called any of the darker complexion Britons brown men or black men. All right. So they just told you the Britons were brown men or so-called black men, but there's no evidence to show that the English we were calling ourselves or calling them, this. Their name for them was Wealis. So far as I'm aware, not a single instance, and once again, I can't verify, but you got to go with the evidence we have right now. So far as I am aware, not a single instance occurs in which the Welsh are mentioned in any Anglo-Saxon documents as black or brown people. On the contrary, the Welsh annals mention black Vikings on the coast as if they were men of unusual personal appearance. All right, so the Vikings were, there you go. There's another old word used by the Anglo-Saxons to denote black or brown black, the word sweart. The personal names Sword or Seward. So that's where you get the word name Stuart. That's still in King James from the House of Stuart, even though he's coming from the Kingdom of Scotland. He was a Roman Catholic. He still was brown or brown black, complexion wise. All right. May have been derived from this word and may have originally denoted people of a dark brown or black complexion. Some names of this kind are mentioned in the Domesday record of Buckinghamshire and Lincolnshire. These may be of Scandinavian origin, for the Icknen or nickname Swarthy is found in the northern sagas. Halfdan the Black was the name of a king of Norway who died in 863. The so-called black men of the Anglo-Saxon period probably included some of the darker Windish people among them, immigrants or descendants of people of the same race as the ancestors of the Sorbs or Lusatia on the borders of Saxony and Prussia at the present day. Some of the darker winds may well have been among the black Vikings and in the Irish annals, as well as those of Wales, and may have been the people who have left the Anglo-Saxon name Blackmenenberg, which occurs in one of the charters. Blackmenstone on the Kentish coast and Blackmanstone on the Dorset coast. As late as the time of Domesday survey, you meet with the records of people apparently named after the dark complexions in Buckinghamshire. Blatchman, Swartinus, and others are mentioned. In Sussex, one named Block, and Suffolk, Blackmanus, and Sodertingus, and others at Lincoln. The invasion of the coast of the British Isles by Vikings of a dark or black complexion rests on historical evidence, which is too circumstantial to admit of doubt. In the Irish, so once again, we just explained that the names, the place names, was a representation of the complexion of the inhabitants of these locations. And I'm not going to go too much further into this. Get this book. It's a gem. It's a dime to have in your arsenal, And when I mean your arsenal, just mean your books, Get this book. It says these black Gentiles on some occasions fought against other plunderers of the Irish coast known as the Fairy Gentiles, or who can. So we need to get on to this. Okay. To get to the last part, says there's still another way in which men of black hair or complexions, page 114, or complexions may have come into England, these as thralls among the Norse invaders. So also showing you that the Norse or the Normans were brown or dark people too. So all that they said is family. We so mixed up that as you start tracing your family name back, you'll start seeing you mix with a lot. And, it does get confusing, but to simplify it today, just go with who you were since time immemorial 1189 until today. And as I'm showing you, we're Berbers or Anglo-Saxon Berbers or Englishmen. Okay. All right. So now let me get to my surname. Now, so that way we can kind of start seeing who you are, because this is how you're going to know your bloodline, your genealogy. It's going to come through your surname, and your surname is your free name, and it's an inheritance, and it wasn't given to you from so-called people who were in placed in bondage owners. You know, that's not the case. These are yours. And we just proved it from the Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race book, or my surname, Belmont. And I'm going to show you the different variations of your surname that could have been spelled through different times. And the fact that you don't know this will have you throwing out imperative information to connect you to your family. You may say like, oh, well, this says my family from so-called Scotland, but don't realize there's actually a translator, another variation of that word that comes to England, because many of these families, they married together, you know, or spread out in a different part of the kingdoms, you know, but it's all underneath the empire of Albion. All right, so let's go ahead and get to this. So let's type in my surname, Belmont. All right, so it says Belmont, history, family crest, and coat of arms. And this is the Scottish aspect, because you got to accept all parts, but you need to know how to bring it together back into the Kingdom of England, and tying yourself back to that birthright. Okay, so it says the Picts, an ancient Scottish tribe, were the ancestors of the first person to use the name Belmont. Now we know the Picts. That term was created by the Romans. That was what they call the Albions or the Albidosis. Picts was just the term they called us. Now, Pict is another way to say painted people or tattooed. Now, but they were dark or brown complexion people, which you just proved. So if anyone tried to say, oh, no, that didn't mean who the Picts were, get out of here. Remember, these are folks who don't want to hear the truth and want to cause confusion, but those days are over. You know, come out that fog, let go of that pain, and just accept the truth. All right, it says the early origins of the Belmont family. The surname Belmont was first found in Caithness. That's northern so-called Alba, or what they call Scotland, a Norse Viking controlled region from the 9th century, which became an earldom of Caithness, where they had been settled from ancient times long before the Norman conquest in 1066. Okay, so like I said, my family predates William the Conqueror, you know, and we're going to see from just adding a letter brings our family, and I like to call it when we picked up our cross, because that's what it is, the T. And the T means the thou, or the way. But we'll talk about another session. All right. All right, so Belmont, and that's why I say call me Archbishop Belmont, because it's me picking up my cross, come back home to England, but I still have my connection back to Alba, because that's whatever. All right, so Belmont is the name that was carried to England in the Great Wave of migration from Normandy, following the Norman conquest of 1066. So that's now coming in. Now, the Belmont family lived in Dorset and Gloucestershire. There existed at a remote period a family of Beaumont. So this is the other way how you spell my family name, in Normandy. And it was probably one of the cadets whose name was inscribed on the muster roll at battle. Certain it is that he could not have been the founder of the illustrious House of Beaumont, which in 2 centuries after appears so prominently conspicuous among the most potent barons of the realm, and which was established in this country by Henry de Beaumont, 4th son of Agnes de Beaumont, by her husband Louis, 2nd son of Charles, supposed to be king of Jerusalem and nephew of Louis IX of France. All right, you look to the right, you see my family coat of arms, the lion with the 8 fleur-de-lis. All right, and now it says the surname Belmont was first found at Dorset, Gloucestershire, where Roger de Beaumont appears in the Domesday Book as chief tenant. According to Sir H. Ellis, he was a near kinsman of the Conqueror, being lineal descendant of that king's great-grandfather. So they're showing you my family's real connected. We're connected to all of the kings, all of the kingdoms going back. Some trace the noble English families from the Viscounts Beaumont of Normandy, and others from the blood royal of France. So we go back to Normandy, go back to France, once again, Alba, as well, the kings of Jerusalem. And eventually we'll talk about Erdogan and Castile and all that, but that's not for this video. The chapel of Ryle, Northumberland, is a particular interest to this family. This was the lordship of John Lord Beaumont, who died seized of Ryle by about the year 1396, leaving it with many other estates in this county and elsewhere to his son and heir, Henry, then 16 years of age, who was knighted at the coronation of Henry IV. All right, and the rest of this, like I said, if anyone want to read this, you can read on your own time and just read this last part. Upper Whitley in the West Riding of Yorkshire was home to another branch of the family. The founder of the ancient family of Beaumont here was a knight hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem, who received a manor on condition of performing certain military services in the time of Henry III. Whitley Hall has ever since been the principal residence of the family and is now in possession of Archbishop Belmont Esquire. Okay. And we'll talk about, like I said, why these people got our stuff later, you know. And let me just show you, just so that way folks who like say, oh, is Belmont the same? We'll pay attention to family crests. And it's the same. Like I said, it's the same people, same family. Just the name is spelled different. Okay. Like I said, Anglo-Norman names tend to be marked by an enormous number of spelling variations. This is largely due to the fact that Old and Middle English lacked any spelling rules when Norman French was introduced in the 11th century. The languages of English courts at the time were French and Latin. So we had a mixture. These various languages mix quite freely in the evolving social milieu. The final element of this mix is the medieval scribes spelled words according to their sounds rather than any definite rules. So a name was often spelled in as many different ways as the number of documents it appeared in. So as you see, the name was spelled Beaumont, 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 Beaumonte, Beaumonte, Belmont, Belmont. So you see, now I just remove the T. It's still Belmont. Same family, same people. It's me, my family. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and show a couple of other, like I said, very common melanated surnames that we use today, and show you that these people this is who you are. This is who you come from. You have a family coat of arms and crest, which means you have a birthright. But the only way for it to be applicable, you have to come back into the kingdom or to the nation that you had all of that with. So, for instance, if you have a trust that was created in England, that trust is only can be used in England. You can't go and use it in a whole new nation or place and say, oh, but I have a trust. Yeah, where you come from, you do. So you got to come back home. And that's what we're trying to do, bring you home, because as long as you're out there and you're claiming these erroneous titles or fictitious names, whatever, these stock character roles, you're going to not inherit the kingdom of heaven, which is the kingdom of England. All right, so let me go ahead and check another surname. Let's look at black man, because we hear it all the time. Description, he's a black man. Okay, there you go, black man. And we already told you that black, or when they use these terms, it was because of the complexion of the people. Now, in the black man, as you see, is the Blackman family. The surname Blackman was first found in Durham, but also in other areas of Britain, including John Blakeman, who was listed in Devon during the reign of Henry III, and in Norfolk, where Blackman Filius out of Waterdeed was listed in the Pipe Rolls of 1166. Jordanus Filius Blakeman or Blackman was listed in the Pipe Rolls of Hampshire of 1188. A few years later, the Pipe Rolls of 1206 listed John Blackman in Surrey. So it's showing you this is, and here's other variations of the name. Blackman Curtin made references from time to time. It was spelled Blackman, Blackman, and others. So, and this is going all the way back time immemorial. Look at family crest or the ancient arms. English. Origins available, England. So this is, once again, so-called black man, this is your origins. England, you got to come home and don't identify as the complexion that they're trying to call you. Identify as the kingdom or the nation you come from. And then the surname is the family, the Blackman family, who comes from the kingdom of England. Don't identify me as my complexion, because that's ambiguous, which will keep me from connecting to anything else that is a right or protection. All right. All right, so let's look at another one. It's a lot of Johnsons. Johnson. Johnson is the name of ancient Norman origin. It arrived in England with the Norman conquest of 1066. Johnson is the name that comes from the given name John, and name literally means son of John, or we can say Johann. The name given John is derived, which also another name to say Yahya, is derived from the Hebrew name Johann, which means Jehovah has favored. So those whose name's Johnson, that means you're the son of Jehovah's favorite, or what Jehovah has favored, which is God. And the true God and the true understanding of that is England. Yeah, via going all the way back to King Edgar the Peaceful, who's the true Jesus Christ. All right. The name was extremely and beyond the understanding of God goes further than that. But for this lesson, the true Jesus Christ, we're telling you the truth is King Edgar the Peaceful, who's right there. Okay. The name was extremely popular in the Middle Ages as a result of the numerous connections between the name John and the Christian church. The surname Johnson was first found in Lincolnshire, where many of the ancient and leading houses of the family name claim descent originally from the house of Fitzjohn in Normandy, particularly that of the leading branches and oldest and Johnsons of Ascoffi. Okay. And we ain't got to go into all these other ones. Like I said, check this out on your own time. Remember John, another way is to say Johnson. Let me see, Jones. Now, Jones, like I said, it goes to Wales, but it's still part of the name John. So to get Johnson comes to England, whatever, and all the others, Jones is just a Wales, which is still part of England. And like I said, Yahweh is gracious. All right, so those origins are in English. Here you go. So his name has always been common in Britain, rivaling William in popularity by the beginning of the 14th century. The feminine form, Joan or Joanna in Latin, was also popular, and the surname Jones may be derived from either the male or the female name. Though its origins are in England, the surname is predominantly held by people of Welsh extraction, so it comes from England. Due to the overwhelming use of the patronymics in Wales from the 16th century and the prevalence of the name John at the time, next to John Smith, John Jones is probably the most common combination in names in Britain. All right, so it shows you, so Jones goes back to England, same way Johnson goes back to England. Let's look at Smith. Oh, Smith goes to England as well. Smith is an Anglo-Saxon name. The name was originally given to a metal worker, the blacksmith. Now, remember, if it got called a blacksmith, that's not only the so-called name for what you do, but it's also, too, a terminology for your complexion. It is derived from the Old English word smid, probably derived from smitten, which meant to strike with a hammer. As a metal worker was such a common and important profession in medieval times, his name and cognates are extremely widespread throughout the British Isles and Europe. However, there's some debate as to why the occupation of blacksmith would lead to such a popular surname. Well, we already know why. One might expect that farmer also occupation name, but with far more people involved in the profession of Middle Ages, blah, blah, blah. Surname Smith is probably fifth type size, described single source, blah, blah, blah. All right. And just read it for yourself. Wotan Hail, Wotan. So remember, we see Wotan, that's Wotan. Wotan or Wotan or Odin. God Odin. That's who God is, Odin. But we ain't gonna talk about that's another lesson. King Edgar the Peaceful is God. And remember, so that energy of Odin, of God, comes down. You got to know the stories. All right. Let me see anything else on here. So we went to Smith, Jones, Johnson, Black man. So my surname. Let's show you the kings. That way, for those who need to know. Because King Jefferson is where you get the name, or it comes from Godfrey, God. See, so showing you. The Jefferson surname comes from the Norman personal names Godfrey and Godfrey, or Geoffrey and Godfrey. These names appear in Middle English as Geoffrey, and Old French as Geoffroy or Geoffroy or Godefridus, and Godefridus are early. Godefridus and Golfridus are early forms of the name. These indicate a Germanic first element derived from either Gala, which means to sing, or Gawi, which means region or territory. The surname Jefferson also features patronymic son, which speeded all the other such suffixes, blah, blah, blah. But Jefferson actually means peaceful ruler. And we're going to show you on another page because I don't see why it doesn't have it on here. All right. All right, here you go. Jefferson. That way brothers and sisters can see, understand. Jefferson is a patronymic surname meaning son of Jeffrey, Jeffers, or Jeff. Jeffrey is a variant of Jeffrey, meaning peaceful place, from Gabia, meaning territory, and Frid, meaning peace. Jeffrey is also a possible variant of the normal personal name Godfrey, meaning God's peace or peaceful ruler. So when we say the King of Peace has returned, King Clifford Jefferson is the King of Peace. Surname origin, English. Born, Berber New Year, January 14th. Okay. All right, and let's go ahead and get to the final part of this, because once again, I wasn't supposed to go as long as I did, but hopefully brothers and sisters who've been paying attention has been learning a lot from this. And once again, you're not going to get these lessons from anyone else unless they're here on the King's Bench, the Third Temple English Church of England. And this is, like I said, we're only here for our English heirs, because as I'm showing you, even going back to so-called year 800, 900, we was always still known as English. So any breakage after that, it not calling me who I am is null and void. As I'm picking up the pieces, I don't have to call myself so-called any of these new titles or tribes and things like that. That's not me. I'm English, we're verifying it. So let's go back, show you. Family tree, me, Dion Belmont. My mother name is Priscilla Belmont or Belmont. All right. She came from my grandmother, Katie Mae Belmont. And the cool thing about my family, or the Beaumonts, is that it's a matriarch. Yeah, it's the family, even like as we've seen, the Albions, it was a matriarchal society. And the Belmonts, as you see, we started off as a matriarchal society, and it seems, like I said, the history repeats itself. It's in the blood, we are who we are. All right, so my grandmother, her father was Edgar Belmont. Her mother was Katie Owens. Now, the Owens family, or the Owens side, we'll talk about another lesson, that's Prince Matic. All right, and Prince Matic Owen, or King Owen. So that's another connection, but we'll talk about another video. All right, so Ebener, like I said, my great grandfather, and then his father, come on over here, Britain, which is my great great grandfather, born 1879. And then his father, Harry Belmont. Now, Harry was born in 1810, but I don't have the date on there. And the reason why is because it's, a lot of this information is hard to find. And I'm happy that I was able to get this info. Now, the point about me showing you this is, as you see, you have to use what you already have at your disposal to connect your lineal tree. Go and use your surname, as I'm showing you. And I showed you already how it's connected back to England and who those people were. So don't try to connect it with anything else, because it's going to confuse you. This is only for those who want to accept their English identity. All right. And when you do accept that, you have to come back home. You can't go out there and use it loosely without knowing the ramifications of not actually being tied and affiliated to your church, which is the Third Temple English Church of England today. So that way you have your rights and things via the statutes that were preserved for us today as heirs to be able to use today for our protection. Okay, now my great great grandfather, his name is Britain, once again. And I asked my auntie, my grandmother's sister, how did he get this name? Because at this time I was very confused, like a melanated man with the name Britain. How is that possible? But I was clueless and, which we would consider incompetent of the knowledge and the history, because you not knowing your history of who you are, where you come from, makes you incompetent in the eyes of law. So today, all of our brothers and sisters who don't know this knowledge or history of who they are, you're considered incompetent, which means you're underneath wardship status, which means you have a guardian. and that guardian is the state. And the only way for you to come out of that wardship status is you have to be able to prove who you are. But only way for you to prove who you are, you got to come back home, and you got to have proof. But we ain't talk about that right now. That's another video. All right. So, and he was born in South Carolina, Britain. So that confused me. And I said, I had to start doing my studies, going down the rabbit hole. And it took me some years to start coming full circle until the king came. You know, when the king came, he put the rest of what was needed for my understanding to know, oh, okay, this is Britain. So when they said he's named Britain from where he come from, even though he's born in 1879, it was things that was happening. Our folks were losing consciousness regarding where they were coming from, you know, identity-wise. So how can you save somebody? Which would you just show, you put it in their name. So that way, because the name, it means it all. It tells the story, or it gives you an identity, at least, where these people are or who they are. So if his first name, she said his name Britain from where he come from, then that means that's where he come from. He came from Britain. So I had to accept that, even though he's born in South Carolina. So I'm going to see, okay, well, South Carolina was underneath British occupation during colonial time because it was called what? The province of Carolina, or the colony of Carolina. And during this time, remember, our people was here. So as Englishmen, because this was always the Kingdom of England, as far as we know it. All right, now let's go to, so before I get off of Ancestry.com, this, brothers and sisters, this is what you're going to want to use to help you, and use your birth certificate, surname. If you changed it, better go find it, because the only way for this to be able to be applicable for you, you have to connect yourself back to the Empire of Albion, which is England, Ireland, Scotland, which is Alba, Wales, that territory, but this is here. All right. And let's get to the last point, the verified, because once again, showed you born in South Carolina, and he's known or identified as so-called Black or Negroes. Now let's show you that these were Berbers. Negro, the Negro Law of South Carolina, 1740. And we're going to go straight to it. Section 4. It says the term Negro is confined to slave Africans, the ancient Berbers, and their descendants. Let me repeat. The term Negro, I'm going to say black, colored, whatever, is confined to slave Africans. So African is a misnomer. Negro is a misnomer. They're the ancient Berbers, as you see. So do you ever recall this in any time, or called you in any time, this, or so-called this, or African-American, is telling you that this is who you are. You're a descendant of the ancient Berbers because you were enslaved. Because they told you it was to slave you. They called you that to slave you, to put you in enslavement. So they call you Black or Negro. These are to put you into bondage. But you're Berbers. And so if this is coming from South Carolina, 1740, my people coming from South Carolina, and they were called so-called Negroes, then that means that there it is, the ancient Berbers. And then it says it does not embrace the free inhabitants of Africa, such as Egyptians, Moors. Remember, Moors are Berbers too, but all Berbers aren't Moors. Or the Negro Asiatics, such as Lascars. And we just clearly said the Negroes are Berbers. So these are still Berbers. So they're breaking us up and classifying us based off of what they need and fit at that time. And most time at this point, this is because they're breaking the English heirs out of their connection to from them knowing that they were Berbers, but also Anglo-Saxon Berbers. So they were literally destroying our identity completely. Like you couldn't connect to anything. So once again, hopefully our brothers and sisters who have been underneath this spell start realizing that you have to come out of it. Come out of her, my people. Otherwise, you're going to perish away. And you have to clean yourself up to come home, because we can't have our brothers and sisters who are still living the life and the ways of a dead status being coming into the house of light, which is the truth, which is the way that your ancestors said it before we came into the positions of not knowing. You know, I can't tell you what happened after 1812, which is the banking wars, the great earthquake, what they call the great mud flood, or the Great Madrid earthquake. Something happened why we forgot this, but it was preserved. It was preserved in legislation. And eventually they knew that we were going to start utilizing our ability to use reasoning and common sense, because as we see, common sense ain't so common, but you can get it back if you start training yourself to remember and utilizing your faculties that you were born with, and not allowing them to be numbed out, living the life that you've been living, which is sin, which means forgetfulness. So once again, brothers and sisters, those who need help understanding this, you need leave comments. You know, we don't really want to leave anybody out, but if you don't respond, we can't help you. So with that being said, I'm your brother, your loving Archbishop from the illustrious Noble House of Beaumont. And we're here for our 144,000. Many are called, few are chosen. This is not to hurt anyone. We come here to do our mother and father's work, which is to bring balance and peace back on planet Albion, which you call planet Earth. And this is the Empire of Albion, AKA Empire of England, or the Kingdom of England. So with that being said, peace.